There is nothing worse than untapped potentials. If you know that you're made for more, this is the place. I know that every successful person I've ever met has one thing in common. They do not let themselves fall victim to their circumstances. They figure out a way to rise above it. So join me on this journey where I help you to be better, do better, and have better in life and in business. If you're feeling stuck and you're needing some practical tools, some hope to get you to that better life, this is definitely the place for you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Unstuck Podcast. I am your host, Lachelle Weemy, and today we get a chance to talk to health coach and personal trainer Mike Howard. You guys are going to be blown away by all the ways that he helps us to be top performers in life, in business, in health, all of the things that it takes to really become the best versions of ourselves. Mike has some really great insight, and I cannot wait to tap into your brain and your wisdom, Mike, and let all of us be able to benefit from all of the amazingness that you have to offer. So thanks so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Lachelle. It's such a pleasure.
Oh my
Such a
gosh.
pleasure to talk to you.
So I would love for you to kind of do your introduction justice, right? Like tell us a little bit more about who you are and how you serve people. Like what lights you up these days?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll keep this as brief as humanly possible. So I've been in the industry a long time, so I won't take you through the entire 25-year journey, but I'll give you some of the highlight points. So yeah, I started in the sort of the fitness industry, early 20s, fresh out of school, and then it just kind of evolved from there. It took different directions, and some of it sort of in the non-fitness realm. And I did have certain points in my career where I thought, okay, gosh, am I really cut out for this? Am I meant to do this? I've had some setbacks, and my life was kind of a hot mess, and I was trying to help other people, in that sense, and I wasn't sort of getting it done in my own life. So, it's hard to inspire people when you're trying to come from a place of being uninspired or, just stuck, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So but yeah, no, I persevered. I had other sort of side hustles. Had all of a sudden I had two, babies like within like 2 years of each other. And so it's like, okay, I've got it, real life is hitting me from
Yeah.
every angle.
Right.
But I always knew that this was sort of my calling, fitness. And I knew I had to be in a capacity where I was helping people. And I knew that this was the best route for that. So I wore different hats, as I said. So I did the gym management thing. I did personal training. I worked with young children. I did some teaching, and then I got into writing about 16, 17 years ago. So that was a good sort of, I guess, intellectual outlet
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
And then yeah, no, it's been a crazy sort of imperfect and flawed but wonderful journey, and I love continuing on it. And so now I coach both online. I still do a lot of personal training in person. I still do some writing. I love the teaching aspect of it. I run retreats. So I do a lot of things. My brain's all over the place, as you can probably tell from that scattered introduction. But yeah, no. So right now I'm just trying to focus on what matters and how I can best,
Yeah.
serve people.
So tell us a little bit about the way that you're showing up online. So you said you do some coaching
Mhm.
online. You said that you do some teaching. So tell us specifically what it is that you coach around or what you teach.
Mhm. Yeah, so my primary, I guess, niche is sort of the fat loss and better health.
Okay.
And the industry is a kind of a wild west in a lot of ways. There's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff out there, and a lot of it, some of it good, some of it not so good, some of it
Yeah.
very ugly. So I just try to provide a decent signal to all the noise that's out there. So, and I try to do it in a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, humorous way, an accessible way. So I try to provide things that are actionable and tell people, look, it's okay. It's more of a compassionate approach and
Yeah.
less of a stringent approach,
Yeah.
because I find a lot of the dietary and exercise and lifestyle um, trends these days, they tend to veer on extremes, and I think I'm trying to steer people away from extremes and from things that are potentially going to set people up for failure long term. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's definitely not as sexy, but the sustainable kind of
Mhm.
moderation thing is definitely, it does work when applied correctly.
Right.
So I'm just trying to help people apply it in a way that works for them.
Yeah, and I love how were so open with us on your own journey. And I love how you just said like it kind of was kind of messy in the middle and kind of windy, and you had all of these different paths that have led you to where you are today. And I love that
Hmm.
because I think that there's so much that goes into weight loss or sustainable change in anything that really has to do with our mind. And I know that when
Hmm.
we've talked in the past, like you and I both can geek out on all of the things that have to do with the way that our limiting beliefs can impact our success in
Hmm.
anything. The ways that we talk to ourselves, the way that we think about the world can really impact. And I would also love to acknowledge the fact that when you have these gurus that are out there, they might have read all the books, right? But it's when
Hmm.
somebody like yourself has kind of gone through all of the things that you've gone through, you come to this situation with this compassion and this real life experience
Hmm.
that allows people to know that they're not alone. Like you're allowing them to be the hero of their story, and you're the
Hmm.
guide that has gone maybe a step or two ahead of them and kind of ready to kind of lock arms and go on this journey together. And I think that's how the two of us really connected, because that's how I am as
Hmm.
well, right? We want to
Yeah.
make our own story be just this inspiration for and the hope for people to keep going, but allowing
Hmm.
them to be the hero. And I just would love for you to, if you're willing, give us some more insight into some of the things that you personally have had to overcome to get to this place that you are.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that. There's so much in that's great. And I think it's so well said. And the hero of your own story always stands out to me as
Yeah.
well, because I think that's ultimately what we try to do as coaches. And I think that shifts things in a sense where it's not so much about the coach, and we try to see ourselves as this powerful force, but really it's the individual that we're helping. It's them taking the journey. They
Yes.
are the hero. We're just kind of guiding them, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
but yeah, no, for sure. And I think you touched on some things there too, where it was like, yeah, no, sort of. And I did do a deep dive into the whole psychology of things, because I felt I was pretty decent in the realm of like, my background's in kinesiology, and then I did a deep dive into the nutrition aspect of
Right.
things. And I thought, okay, even these two things combined, I don't feel like I feel like I'm helping people get stronger. They're getting fitter, slightly healthier, but I'm not creating transformational change. And so that's what I did, deeper dives into the psychology and the mindset of things. But when I was examining that and down that rabbit hole, it
Yeah.
was like a full length mirror, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't have my own stuff together. Like it
Yeah.
was just I had to sort of peel back all these layers and
Mhm.
just say, wow, like so much of this stuff that I'm trying to teach other people, like this is
Yeah.
stuff like I'm learning, and I'm still learning. Don't get me wrong, this is
Yes.
stuff that I like. I feel
Right.
like I'm not there. It's a continuous process of growth, right? But yeah,
Right.
it just really keyed in on the mindset aspect of things. And my own life, I was just like, okay, it was a terrible relationship, and like, am I a good parent, having like dad guilt, and like
Mhm.
just feeling like I don't have that direction. Like I was doing okay in my job, but not amazing. I didn't have enough clients to sustain me, and I was working a job as a courier, and I'm like, so all these different, I guess, forks in the road. And yeah, just there was some pain there, right? And I just had to kind of extract it bit by bit, and just do the work, as it were, and I continue to do so. But I think coming from that place, you are better able to help people when you're vulnerable and you show vulnerability. And that's what I
Yeah.
try to encourage other people to do. Like, it's okay to not be okay. Like,
Right.
I'm not a counselor. I'm not, that's not my credential, but I
Yeah.
think everybody to some degree struggles from some form of mindset um issues that can hold them back. And as you said, sort of, we get in our own ways, and yeah, just it does become difficult to take that step forward.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that I personally have had, pop into my brain a time or two, and from what you're telling me, you could possibly relate to this, but it's like this question, like, do I really have what it takes?
Hmm.
right? And so, in business, or maybe you're on your weight loss journey, or maybe, you're being told all the things that you have to do. I think that sometimes we can get into our heads and think, okay, well, do I really have what it takes to make this happen? And if we don't believe that we can
Hmm.
personally see results or personally make it happen, it's really hard for us to show up and do all of the little and big things to make it happen. So it really
Hmm.
does come down to this inner belief in ourselves that is possible for us. But sometimes the
Yes.
journey is hard, isn't it? And we
Oh,
start to
yeah.
question, like, oh my gosh, do I really have what it takes? And I think that, your story about, like, gosh, I'm going into all of this stuff, and wow, like, I'm a mess in a sense that I don't have it all together. So how can I help other people? And I think that sometimes we can get into that imposter syndrome of, okay, do I really have what it takes to help other people? Or do I really have what it takes to make this happen? What have you done to help you kind of on that journey to get to where you are today? Like, what is some of the work that you had to do on your own to get you to the place that you were to where you are now?
Yeah, that's great. So a lot of it does, and we talked a great deal about the mindset aspect of
Yeah.
things, and I think
Yeah.
for me it was just like the work I had to do was catching myself in those moments and not letting things spiral out of control. Because I think to some degree it's normal. We're all going to have those thoughts. We're all going
Mhm.
to have those demons, I guess, as it were, just
Yeah.
knocking at the door at least, right? And so I think catching myself in those moments and doing my own counseling and just seeking that help when I need it, seeking that uh, I guess just raw feedback from other people. And I'm very, very fortunate to have amazing people in my life too that
Yeah.
are supportive. So from that standpoint, I've been yeah very lucky. But also yeah, I think just it comes with small action, right? And I think that's what I tell people all the time. So instead of trying to um, mindset your way into action, acting your way into better types of thinking is big. So just doing things for yourself that are productive both from a physical and a psychological slash emotional standpoint. So it meant keeping good with my exercise and keeping good with eating, because again, like that, I felt like a hypocrite because this is what I'm trying to teach other people, and then when I get down in the dumps, okay, like I'm eating, convenience foods, or I'm not exercising because I'm working on projects, and I'm doing things that the exact
Yeah.
opposite,
Right. Right.
exactly what I'm telling others not to do.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it was just taking those small actions and okay, if I can do this, if I can sort of discipline myself to do it in this way, other things tend to fall into place a little bit more easily. If you have some of those solid sort of keystone foundational things in place.
Yeah. So I love what you were saying, because it's the small steps, and it's the acting your way into the mindset, because I think that
Hmm.
oftentimes we feel like we have to have this like rock solid mindset or this rock solid emotional state for us to get into
Hmm.
action. But I think that oftentimes if we can create small subtle mini habits that allow us to do before we even have to think, we literally can act our way or behave our way into who we want to become. Is that kind of
Hmm.
what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I think, that's it. We have to identify as that person that we
Mhm.
wish to become. So identify as a healthy person. And so much of our purpose is in our identity. So instead of saying, yeah, I exercise sometimes, or I try
Yeah.
to eat healthy.
Yeah.
No, I'm a healthy eater. I'm an exerciser. I'm somebody that pursues a healthy lifestyle. So then it becomes less about hammering square pegs into round holes and more
Yeah.
about aligning with who we're
Yes.
meant to be, having it part of
Yes.
our value system, and
Oh my
yeah, just
gosh.
making it a priority for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, those are a couple of the things. Like, one of the things that I've been doing is offering something called the becoming experience, which is something that I take people through who is it that they want to become, and then
Mm,
backdooring it into the small little things that we have to do to become that person. And it's so much fun because a couple of the things that you said really resonate with me and the things that I do for people. I have them, create their vision for their life, their future life, and then
mm,
I actually have them record themselves reading it with emotion and joy,
love that.
and then listening to that every morning and every night before they go to sleep.
Wow.
And that allows for us to take on the identity of the person that we wish to become, so that when we're faced with those forks in the road, right, we get to choose the one that's consistent with the identity that we're taking on.
Mm,
Affirmations are huge too. I just had a conversation with my sister, and I love her, and so she was like, I just wish that I was better with money. And I'm like, well, then
mhm,
that you need to take on that identity. I am
mhm,
good with money.
mhm.
And when we tell ourselves that every single day, we start to take on that identity, so that when we're faced with those small decisions, it's like, well, do I want to buy that because I'm good with money?
Right. Yeah, I
Right.
love that. Yeah.
So what are some of the other micro habits that you do on a regular basis? Those are a couple of the ones that I do, but I would love to know
Yes.
kind of what you do on a daily basis to help to become that person.
And I think I'm going to touch on one thing and just sort of riff off of that because I think
Yeah.
it was amazing is that, you're sort of thinking about working backwards. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes to move forward, we have to work backwards. So we look at
Yes.
an outcome goal, but then we have to break it down and we have to go that step deeper to go
Right.
that step further. So for
Right.
example, okay, I said right off the top, my niche, I guess, as it were, is weight loss, fat loss, body transformation, but it's way beyond that. And there's almost like a stigma attached to that sort of thing. And it's, when I get people in, they do realize, okay, it's not about the weight so much. It's about transforming your lifestyle, your mindset, your habits, your identity, and just
Right.
all of that. So
Yeah.
when we talk about working backwards, I might say, okay, if your goal was say 20 pounds, okay, that's an outcome goal. That's great. But what do
Right.
you have to do to what are your steps, the goals behind the goals, the
Right.
process
Right.
goals?
Yeah.
And that might be, okay, I've got to get better at eating and
Mhm.
exercising. So what do I have to do to that? I have to create better grocery shopping habits. What do I have to
Mhm.
do to that? I have to create better time management. What do I have to do to that? Okay, I have to prioritize. I have to sort of see things in blocks. And then you know what it comes down to
Yeah.
sometimes, and then me personally,
Right.
because you did ask about me, but
Yeah.
plugging my phone into a different room before I went to bed was such a game changer. Like I did
Yes.
this 3 years
Yes.
ago,
Yeah.
and it works on so many different levels because
Mhm.
A, I'm not scrolling mindless. Like I still have a problem with mindless scrolling, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong,
We
but
all do,
you
right?
know, but I could spend easily
Yeah.
an hour before bed, and then all of a sudden that creeps into your good sleeping habits.
Right.
And then if I wake up during the night, I don't have my phone right beside me. I've got no choice
Right.
but to just go back to bed. And then when the alarm goes off, I have to actually get my butt out of bed and turn it off, so I can't just hit the snooze button.
Right.
So that did so many things and allowed for me to have better sleep, allowed for me to have that clarity. And I think for a lot of people too, it is just finding ways that you can carve out that time, because now that we know it's part of your identity and your values, then it becomes how do we execute that, because it is more about priority than it is about time, and that's sort of the tough love lesson. But I
Right.
think
Oh,
if we were to
100%.
kind of, yeah, yeah, I read someplace that we spend 275 hours on average a year trying to decide what to watch, what to wear, and what to eat, right? So there are ways that we can kind of shave these time suckers out of our
Right.
existence, and
Right.
just focus more on what matters most.
Well, and I think that you touch on something that I think is really fascinating, and one that I want to highlight here is this figuring out like the little stumbling blocks that we don't even acknowledge that are keeping us from this best version of ourselves, right? So
Hmm.
maybe it's that you want to identify as yourself as somebody who is fit. So like here's an example.
Hmm.
I have a client, a couple of them actually, who are uncomfortable with the way that they look. Their weight is
Hmm.
not the same as it was several years ago. They have these big dreams to be on stage, but maybe they have the identity of, oh, I don't want to see myself in that space
Hmm.
looking like I do. Okay.
Right.
So then we have to acknowledge that, like, okay, well, there's lots of different things with mindset that we can do to start loving our body, but there's also things that we have to do to start changing the way that our
Hmm.
body is performing as well, right? And so
Hmm.
you're like, okay, well, it might be as simple as I need to eat better or I need to exercise. And it is something as simple as like, okay, well, I need to make it a priority and I need to
Hmm.
mindset through it, right? But there might be
Hmm.
some very subtle things that we're not acknowledging. Like, what does our schedule look like? If we're jam packed from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. every single day,
Hmm.
and we haven't made the time as a block to do those things, then how are we going to make that happen? Right?
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
really just looking at all of these different ways that might be barriers that you're not even acknowledging. Like, how do we need to rearrange your day and your time management to make sure that you're giving yourself this opportunity to perform in this way? Right? Is that what you're saying?
hmm Yeah, 100%. And I think, we talk a lot about, you hear a lot about motivation and inspiration, that sort of thing, and habits. And, you know, I think that that sort of segues very nicely into this topic where we do talk about the inspiration, because most people at a baseline do want to do better for themselves
Right.
and get
Right.
healthier. So it is a matter of what you were saying, like your schedule, looking at your schedule, but also um, if we touch into the realm of habits and motivation,
Mhm.
it's our cues and our context, and that's what matters the most, and the proximity of things. So a lot of it
Yeah.
is, I spend very little time, to be honest, on the X's and O's of this journey, which is like the nutrition and the exercise. I spend more of it on helping people create an environment where they're relying less on motivation, because motivation is only going to take you so far,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
But if you're not putting yourself in a position to be
Mhm.
successful, it's going to crumble, even if you do have a strong identity in wanting to be healthy.
Yes.
But part of that
100%.
identity is setting your environment up for success.
Yes.
So your home environment, your on the road environment, your work environment, if people still commute to work. I don't know if people do that anymore,
Yeah.
but also your holiday environment, your social environment. All these things have to, because we live in a world that sets us up for failure. We have a brain that it was designed in a time where the best way to save was to consume. We're based on survival, and we're plunked into this world of absolute abundance and very accessible, very cheap ways to get a lot of empty calories. So
Right. Right.
we have to live in a way that's mostly defensive in that sense.
Yeah.
And if we're not shaping our own personal environment
Mhm.
to be conducive to that, it's going to, the wheels will fall off real
Oh
quick.
my gosh. So I love this. Like, let's go here because this is so
Okay.
important. So, what types of things can we all start to do to shape our environment to help
Mhm.
us to set ourselves up for success? Because I 100% agree with you. Like, motivation is based on emotion. So, if your emotions aren't
Mhm.
where they need to be to get you into action, you're probably not going to do it. Right. But if you have created an environment that is going to support the person that you want to become, it makes it less reliant on that motivation and therefore the emotional state that is conducive to that. So, what types of things do you set up in your own environment or in your client's
Mhm.
environment that we could start to think about or start to strategize after we listen to this today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think because a lot of us are spending a lot of our time at home, creating that home environment that is
Okay.
conducive to better eating. So that starts in the grocery store.
Mhm.
So I'll touch on that real quick. And when it comes to grocery shopping, I find there's two sort of main categories we want to focus on. So number one is creating a good, healthy kitchen inventory, right? So that just means, okay, what's your fridge stocked with? What are your cupboards stocked with? What are your what's on your counters, and
Yeah.
having those healthy things visible, eye level, and readily accessible.
Mhm.
And then the second part to the grocery shopping is just your on the go stuff, your emergency, the crap is at the fan type of things, right? Where it's just like these kind of like, and that's your non-perishable protein items, some things that you can put in your glove compartment at work, or if you're in a pinch that you can come home. It might even be
Yeah.
a protein bar, which I'm not a huge fan of, but like these are good in emergency situations where you have
Right. That
nothing
might
else
keep you
and
from
you can.
going through the McDonald's parking or McDonald's
Exactly.
drive-through, right? So if you have
Yeah.
something to go to that helps to prevent you from making those split second decisions, that's huge.
Yes.
So I'm curious, what do you recommend instead of a protein bar? I'm just very curious about that.
Yeah, so I mean, if you eat, if you're not plant-based, beef jerky's fine. Like, a handful of almonds is a good thing that you can keep that's non-perishable. If you're into, they have these small cans of tuna now that are flavored. So like I like to tell people, keep a plastic fork and some napkins and in your car as well,
Yeah.
so you can easily consume that. It's like 22 grams of protein, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Even like a cheese string, like that's fine. All these things are going to work. Like they've got these roasted chickpeas, like some commercially prepared things that aren't too bad. I think those are sort of go-to in terms of like in a pinch
Yeah.
emergency
Yeah.
snack type of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, having a good home environment of things that you can, if the apples are on the counter, you're going to reach for that. Like we're going to eat what's kind of in front of us. So like even with my kids, and if other people have kids, just if you do nothing else, just chop up a bunch of vegetables, leave them on the plate, and the kids will eat them because they're there, right?
Right.
Whereas if there's something else, if there's like granola bars on the counter or something, sugary, they'll just kind of reach for that
Yeah.
instead, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, so basically I'd say get those grocery store habits in place and do that, I think, at least once a week, maybe twice, so that you do have things to cook from.
Yeah.
And you could have a good stable base to work from there. And then, again, with the home environment, like behind me, I've got like exercise equipment. If I'm not tripping over it, like
Mhm.
at some point during the day, I'm probably going to forget about it, right? And early in a
Yes.
pandemic, I had to drag it out of the closet because there's no chance I'm gonna do it. And you'll see people that buy treadmills or buy a Peloton, and it just collects dust. And I
Yeah.
have people say, "Oh yeah, no, I'll just take it in and out of the closet." I'm like, "No, you won't."
Yeah.
Yeah. So it has to be front and center, and it has to
Yeah.
be, eye level is bi level is sort of what they use in marketing terms, and that's the same thing. And eye level is kind of do level when it comes to that. And then outside of the home, right? So our social environment, people are starting to socialize again too. So, you know, maintaining that healthy dynamic as well between friends. And it's like you never want to be that person that's like, oh no, I don't need that, I don't need this. But you know preempting people, just say, hey, look, I'm on this healthy path, I'd love for you all to help me out. And if even you can put some money on it, be friendly bet, like if I order more than
Yeah.
one drink, I'll pay for everybody's drinks, that sort of
Ooh,
thing.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
then taking the reins and say, hey, why don't we do something, why don't we go for a hike or go for a walk, instead of go to the bar tonight, you know what I mean? So social environment is massive, because they and this is kind of wacky, they've done studies where if you have a good friend that becomes overweight, you're 57% more likely to become overweight. But also, if you have a friend that quits smoking, for example, you're 30 something percent more likely to quit smoking as well. So our social
Yeah.
environment and our social cues are huge when it comes to that as well. So just making habits that are undesirable, uh, creating some friction between those, and then making habits like 30 seconds easier that are good for you, or that is sort of a good rule. So just keeping things that are healthy within reach. And then going back to shopping, don't bring anything home. Like you only have to say no once at the grocery store. If you bring it home, you have to say no a bunch of times, right? So,
Yeah.
and it's not to say don't eat anything that's unhealthy or empty calorie. It's that if you want that thing, you got to put pants on, you got to go to the store and buy it yourself, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you only have to take like 10 steps to the fridge to get it
Right. Oh my
if you
gosh,
pick it
that's
up at
so
the grocery store. So
I'm gonna regret asking this question. So I just like I'm really curious. So I go on spurts of wanting to eat better. Okay. So my
hmm
husband is so much better at this than I am. Like he is so content. Like he could have a grilled chicken breast and some vegetables every night and he'd be fine. I get really bored with
hmm
that.
hmm
So then what he teaches me, he's like, Lachelle, you don't need to make it so stinking complicated. So I'll go in and I'll
hmm
come up with all these new recipes that are healthy and I'll go out and I'll buy all this stuff and I make it way more complicated than I have to.
hmm
However, sometimes I get really bored if I would just, make the same thing every day. So what would you say for people like me that are kind of struggling with, they want to get started on this and we're making ourselves the biggest barrier when it comes to
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That it's such a common thing, and I think everybody has struggled with that
yeah.
to some degree in some point in their lives. So, yeah, I love the thing about simplifying, and I think this comes down to acquiring some skill as well. And I'm not there yet. Uh, However, just being able to take a simple, healthy meal and make it taste just a little bit different, a little bit better. So, experimenting a little bit with different spices, and keeping it simple in the sense that having a good rotation of like three, maybe four things that you can reliably make that are easy, somewhat healthy, and somewhat fast to make,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
our reality is too, a lot of us, we have kids at home, and people are on the go, and we
Yeah.
just have to be able to make something that's simple. and just making one pot dishes, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
and putting that on rotation. So making two different things, and yeah, experimenting, like, okay, maybe one day's chicken, one day's fish, one day's beef, one day's plant-based, so putting something into rotation there sometimes can establish a good rhythm
Yeah.
of variety, but also healthy and stable meal planning, right? So I
Yeah.
think, with meal planning, it doesn't have to be perfect, but the best, the more you can simplify that process, the better off you'll be.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, it's going to be a messy imperfection, and you're acquiring skills, you're learning how to cook, and I think that's
Yeah.
part of it, and not learning how to cook per se, but just learning different meals, right?
Right.
Expanding your
Right.
culinary horizons, as it were.
And what would you say, kind of to tie all this up to with maybe it's exercise, maybe it's eating better, maybe it's, deliberately spending time with your mindset. What do you tell
Mhm.
people to do when it comes to their schedule and their time management to help them create this space in their lives and in their schedule during their day?
Yeah, I love that. And what I emphasize and what I advocate for people is to find the lowest effort, highest reward, um, either skills or habits that they can put into their lives, that's a little bit more seamless. So to give you an example, we touched on a tiny bit when it came to cooking, but like trying to bulk cook on one day, right? Just that's going to save you so much time. It is an initial cost in terms of time,
Yeah.
but like if you just spend a couple of hours, maybe it's on a Sunday, maybe it's on a Monday, and because we've already established that good grocery store habit, and we shop from a list, and we've got all the ingredients, we put
Yep.
that into play. Sleep hygiene is another one, just going to bed maybe a half an hour earlier, waking up 15 minutes earlier, that'll give you a little bit more time for that clarity, that meal prep. It doesn't have to be big, it could be 15 squats, it could be 10 push-ups, it could be going and cutting that vegetable up. So I think trying to integrate as many of these lower effort, higher value habits as you possibly can into your day will have big cumulative effects over the weeks, over the months. And what
Yeah.
we're doing is we're rewiring the brain in a sense, right? So we're
Yep.
we're creating those connections in the brain where it's like, okay, this has become a habit now. Another thing we can do is habit stack. So we take something that we already do and then lump something that we desire to do, or temptation bundling. So for example, like, okay, maybe you like to watch Netflix at night, why not do it, do some push-ups in between? Or if you've got a stationary bike, do that
Yeah.
while you're stationary
Yeah.
biking. So combining two things that you enjoy doing, two things that or sorry, one thing that you enjoy doing, one thing maybe not, right? And we're just bundling the two together.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
as much as you can integrate things into your life, and as much as you can make things easier, make that path a little bit smoother, the best you can do. And then I just you look at everybody's individual situation and say, okay, where can we plunk this in? Where can we make this you know a more seamless entry into your life?
Yeah, oh my gosh, I love that so much because there's some different habits that I've created in my morning routine that are like
Hmm.
one thing prompts the next thing, right? So I listen to my
Yeah,
vision and then I immediately, since I already have my earphones in, I put on my Amazon music and that gets me inspired to get up and do my
perfect,
quick little like 10-minute, sit-ups, push-ups, yoga kind of stuff, right? Then that leads me to I'm already up. So now I'm going to go make my coffee and I'm going to do my affirmations while I'm walking. Like there's different
perfect.
things that
Yeah.
I do that you guys don't have to have, you know, hours and hours. It's just tiny little habits that you build in that eventually
Hmm.
create the space that you're in, throughout the day, day in and day out. And those tiny little micro habits are what create the biggest change and you don't even realize it,
Yes.
right?
I love that. Yeah, the micro habits, tiny habits. And what you touched on there is what Charles Duhigg calls a keystone habit, right? So that's your igniting habit. That's the
Yep.
thing that gets you going. And you're right. Like it's an entire, like, there's layers deep with that, because
Yep.
you've got the music going, and that kind of gets you moving into your day, and you've already done the affirmation. So it's a great rhythm to get into, and it takes some activation energy, right? Because we're very much creatures of habit, and we suffer from what's called the status quo um, status quo bias, whereby we just kind of do things, and the only reason why we do this is because this is what we've been doing, and this is the way our
Yes.
brain's wired. So it
Right.
does take that activation energy. It does take that jump, But once we kind of start that rewiring process, it does
Yeah.
become easier to get. And that's the thing too. I think we sort of give up too easily and we fall off track and we just get discouraged. But that's why I want to encourage people. Everybody does that. Everybody has fits and starts, right? So I think, and it's part of the mindset of that resilience where we just kind of keep doing it, and knowing that we can learn, we can grow, we can progress
Yeah.
if we keep getting back up. And you learn something each time, right? And you will fail, and each time you fail, you will sort of have a little bit of a lesson there, and then you'll find that you're failing less often, and you're not sort of falling off track for quite as long.
Right, right. Which is what you started out saying is that, you can stop yourself going into the spiral a little bit faster.
Hmm.
So it's not that
Yes, yeah.
that's not going to happen. It's just that you're able to catch yourself a little faster and prevent the overall downward spiral. And my joke is that I was really good at working out every day until Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
2017, like whatever. And so, but I think that when you can be intentional about it, like you can actually make that status quo bias be to your advantage because now you've literally
Hmm.
retrained your brain to create a new status quo that
Exactly.
now
Yeah.
you don't even have to think about. So if you're going to be, doing the things without thinking, why not do the things that you want to do without thinking and training your brain
Right.
to create that habit? Oh my gosh, there's so much that we could talk about, but I feel like we need
Yeah.
to wrap this up. Is there anything else, Mike, that you wanted to make sure that we touch on before we wrap up this conversation?
Well, I think what I would like people to know is that, you might be in a place right now where you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm just not getting it. My life is chaotic. I'm captain of the SS hot mess right now. I'm just like, things are falling apart. Like, you're never more than 5 minutes away from turning things back around. And that's what I want to leave people with is that, just put your shoes on and go for a walk, right?
Yeah,
It's such an underrated thing and it's overlooked, but like just that peace and the clarity you can get from going for a walk, or just go to the grocery store now, get some food. What does your kitchen inventory look like? Do you have healthy things on hand? And then just reconnect with your identity, just like in terms of like, you know what, I'm not living my identity right now, or maybe I am, but not to the best that I can. So what can I do right now? And it's paying attention um, to what you're feeling, and that self-awareness piece is huge as well. And that's something I've been trying to work on as well. So maybe it's a couple of minutes of mindfulness and self-reflection, but being gentle with yourself. I think that's huge as well. Acting with self-compassion, and it's okay to fall off, and you're going to be much more likely to continue if you're kind to yourself.
right.
You can give yourself that kick in the butt, like, it doesn't mean you're being complacent. It doesn't mean you don't care as much. It just means that, yeah, I love myself, but I need to go a little bit harder
Yeah.
right now.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, there's so much wisdom in this conversation. You guys, I hope that you love this conversation as much as I did, and I hope that this inspires you to really dig deep and to create those little micro habits that are going to get you to where you want to go. Mike, thank you so much. You guys, if you loved this conversation as much as I did, make sure that you leave a review. Let Mike and I know how much his story and his advice impacted you. We love it if you take a screenshot, share this episode out in your story, share it out in your social media, tag us, let us feature you, but get the word out that this message is somebody that needs to be heard, and it's for the person who really needs to hear it. So we just love interacting with you guys. So make sure that you guys do that, and if you haven't already, just share this out and let people know that this message is here for them. All right, so Mike, one of the things that I always do is I ask the guests to think of a question that the audience can think about or ponder that's going to move them from where they are to where they want to be.
Mhm.
What would you love for them to start thinking about?
Yeah. What can I do today? I think is probably the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yes.
So you may be in a day of chaos or busyness, and you're just right in the thick of things. There's always something you can do to better your health. So I think just waking up and saying, okay, what can I do today to further my health, to further me as a person?
Yeah.
What can I do that's going to make me just a little bit better than I was yesterday, or just to put me that one small step forward.
I love that so much. You guys, I hope that that helped you. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you here next Wednesday morning. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you so much for listening to the Untucked Podcast. I am so grateful to be on this journey with you. And don't forget to check out the show notes if you want to get into my private club, the Better Club, to be able to learn better ways to be better, do better, and have better. So until next time, keep showing up. Let's get unstuck together. Have a great day.